We are going to learn Perek Zayin Mishnah Aleph. This Perek is going to have 5 Mishnahs, and in it we're going to discuss different details about making a mezumin. An important introduction: when 3 men that are over bar mitzvah wash and eat bread together, then before they bench, they have to designate one person to make a mezumin, which means to invite the other people that are with him to join him in praising Hashem and to prepare themselves for benching. In the times of the Mishnayos, the person that would make a mezumin, he would continue and say the entire benching out loud, while the other people that ate with him would listen to him benching from beginning to end, and they would answer Amen, and they would fulfill their obligation of benching by listening to him benching out loud. Now in our Mishnah, we're going to have 10 cases. And in order to be able to explain the details of these cases, we have to first give an introduction of what are the responsibilities of a farmer when a farmer plants and grows wheat. What does he have to do before he is allowed to eat from that wheat? When a farmer would grow produce in Eretz Yisrael, there were certain things that he had to give away, and it was determined based on which year it was grown. Everything the Torah describes is in a 7-year cycle. Years 1 through 6, the farmer would work his land and give certain things away. On the 7th year, the farmer would not work his land. That was the year of Shemitah, and everything in his land was considered hefker, ownerless. So if a farmer worked his land and he planted and grew grain, when the grain was completely ripe, the farmer would harvest it and he would then thresh it. Threshing means that he would crush the kernels of grain. When grain grows, there is a husk, a shell outside of the kernel, and inside of it is a kernel of grain. So the farmer first would crush the grain. Then he would winnow it. The husk and the shell of the kernel is lighter than the kernel itself. The farmer would throw up in the air the kernel and its shell. A wind would come and would blow away the shell, which is lighter, and the kernel, which is heavier, would land back onto the ground. The farmer would then collect all of the kernels of grain and put them all into a pile. And he would then smooth out this pile. Once the farmer finished smoothing it out, it was at this point that the farmer was responsible to begin giving certain things away. The first thing the farmer gave away was called Truma Gedola. The farmer would separate approximately 2%, 1/50th of his produce, and he would give it to a kohen. The next thing the farmer would do is he would designate 10% of the remaining produce, and he would give it to a Levi. This is called Meiser Rishon. Once the Levi received this produce, the Levi would then take 1/10 of what he received, and he would gift 1/10 to a kohen. This is called Trumas Meiser. The farmer then would take another 10% of the remaining produce, and he would do the following. If it was the 1st, 2nd, 4th, or 5th year of the cycle, he would designate this 10% as Meiser Sheni. The farmer would take this produce and he would bring it to Yerushalayim and he would eat it. We're going to learn later in this Mishnah that if, let's say, the farmer could not bring this to Yerushalayim, whether because it was too heavy or because the produce would not stay fresh, the farmer is able to redeem this produce onto money. Now, if it was year number 3 or year number 6 of the cycle, the farmer would actually take this 10% and he would gift it to the poor. So instead of designating Meiser Sheni, he would give this 10% as Meiser Ani. After the farmer has given away all of these things, then everything that was left over in his produce was for the farmer to keep and to eat and to sell. We are now going to learn the Reisha of our Mishnah. In the Reisha, we're going to have 5 cases, where in these 5 cases, a person is allowed to include any one of these people into their group of 3 in order to be able to make a mezumin. Case number 1 is what happens if a person purchased an 8th demai. What is demai? The word demai is a combination of 2 words. It means da mai. What is this? This refers to produce that was grown by an am haaretz, someone who is not so learned. The Chachamim would suspect that there was a significant amount of Amei Haaretz that when they would grow their produce, they would separate and give Truma Gedola to the Kohanim, but they would not separate and give to the Leviim Meiser Rishon, or separate and take with them Meiser Sheni. So if a person were to buy Demai, produce from an Am Haaretz, it was the responsibility of the buyer, first of all, to separate Meiser Rishon, which the buyer would keep, but from the Meiser Rishon, he would separate 10% to give as Trumas Meiser, to gift it to the Kohen, and he would then separate another 10% as Meiser Sheni, which the buyer would then take to Yerushalayim. So says our Mishnah in case number 1, that if a person purchases Demai, which is produce from an Am Haaretz, and he does not separate Meiser Rishon to give Trumas Meiser, or separate Meiser Sheni, and he ate from it, then this person can still be included in making a mezuman. Case number 2, if you had a Levi that before the farmer harvested his produce and threshed it and winnowed it, the Levi came into the farmer's field and he took his 10% for Meiser Rishon while the grain was still inside of its husk, inside of its shell. And he took his 10%. Then this Levi went ahead and took 10% from that which he took, Trumas Meiser, and he gave it to a Kohen. In other words, this produce never had Truma Gedola separated from it and given to a Kohen. Says our Mishnah that if a person eats from this produce, they can still be included in a mezuman. Case number 3, if a person has Meiser Sheni or Hektish. Hektish is produce that a person donated to the Beis HaMikdash. That generally you have to bring these items to Yerushalayim or to the Beis HaMikdash. If a person decides that he's unable to bring this to Yerushalayim, either because it's too heavy or because the produce is not going to stay fresh, then generally a person is allowed to redeem this produce onto money. However, if a person is redeeming this produce onto money for himself, then it's not enough for him to just redeem it for its value. He has to add an extra 1/5. For example, if a person has $100 worth of Meiser Sheni or of Hektish, and he wants to redeem it on money, then it's not enough for him to just redeem it on $100. He has to redeem it on $125, adding an extra 1/5 to the value, and he can then take this money and bring it to Yerushalayim or to the Beis HaMikdash. So if a person redeemed his Meiser Sheni or his Hektish on money, but he did not add an extra 1/5, he only redeemed it for $100, says our Mishnah that if the farmer then eats this produce that was originally Meiser Sheni or Hektish, he is also allowed to be included for a mezumin. Case number 4, if you have a shamish, a waiter that was serving you during your meal, and this waiter ate at least 1 kizayis, 1 ounce, 1 olive size worth of bread, then you can include the waiter into your mezumin. Case number 5 is if you have a kuti. A kuti was a non-Jew that originally came from a city of Kuta. And during the time of the king of Assyria, he took the nation from Kuta and he brought them to Eretz Yisrael. When they were in Eretz Yisrael, there were lions that started to attack them. And out of fear of these attacks from lions, this nation decided to convert and become Yidden. Our Mishnah considers these Kutim that only converted out of fear to be Yidden. So if a person has a meal with a kuti, he is allowed to include him and combine him into your mezumin. We're now going to learn the seif of our Mishnah. This is the last 5 cases. Cases 6 through 10, in these cases, if a person eats a meal with one of these people, they are not allowed to be included into your mezumin. Case number 6 is if a person buys tevel. Tevel is produce that you know that nothing was separated from it. Not truma gedola, not meiser rishon, not trumas meiser, and not meiser sheni. Then if a person eats from this produce, he is not allowed to be included into a mezumin. Case number 7 is if a farmer took his grain and he threshed it and he winnowed it and he put it into a pile and smoothed it out. Generally, the farmer is first supposed to give 2% to a kohen as truma gedola. In this case, the farmer first gave to a Levi the meiser rishon. 10% he gave to him. And if this Levi did not then give 2% from what he took to a kohen as truma gedola, or if the Levi did not then take trumas meiser, which is 10% from what he got, and gave it to a kohen, then if the Levi eats from this produce, then you're not allowed to include him into a mezumin. Case number 8, if a farmer has meiser sheni, or if he has hektish that he's supposed to bring to Yerushalayim, but this farmer does not redeem this produce on any money, and outside of Yerushalayim he eats from this produce, then you're not allowed to include this farmer into a mezumin. Case number 9, if you have a shamish, a waiter, or anyone else that's eating together with you, but they do not eat at least a kazayis, an olive size of bread, then you're not allowed to include them into a mezumin. And the final case number 10, if you are eating together with a non-Jew, then you are not allowed to include him into a mezumin. We are now going to read the Mishnah inside. Says our Mishnah, Shloish shashe achlu ke'echad, 3 Yidden who are over bar mitzvah who ate as one, they ate together, chayavin lezamin are required to make a mezumin. Says the Reisha of our Mishnah, the first 5 cases, in these cases a person will be required to make a mezumin. Case number 1, achal demai, if one ate demai, which is produce that he purchased from Ham Haaretz, and the Chachamim were concerned that the Am Haaretz did not separate meiser from it. Case number 2, Umaiser Rishon, or Meiser Rishon, which is the 10% that a Levi took from the farmer. Shenidla Trumasai, that its Truma was removed. This means that the Levi took this produce from the farmer before the farmer put this produce into a pile and smoothed out this pile. So the Levi removed Trumas Meiser, but he did not remove from it Truma Gedola. Case number 3, Umaiser Sheni vehektish, or Meiser Sheni, or hektish, which is the 10% that the owner was meant to take to Yerushalayim, or produce that he donated to the Beis HaMikdash, sheniftu, that were redeemed. The farmer redeemed the produce onto money, but did not add the additional 1/5 that he should have added. Case number 4, the hashamish sha'achal kazayis, or a waiter who ate a kazayis, an ounce worth of bread while serving the meal. And case number 5, a hakusi, or if a person eats together with a kusi. In these 5 cases, mizamnin alein, we are required to make a mezumin counting them. Continues the seif of our Mishnah, the final 5 cases, that in these cases we are not allowed to count them for a mezumin. Case number 6, aval achal tevel, but if he ate tevel, which is produce that truma or meiser was not separated from it. Case number 7, umaiser rishon, or meiser rishon, which is the 10% that the Levi receives from the farmer. Shaloi nitla trumase, that its truma was not removed. This is referring to a case where the Levi took his 10% from the farmer after the farmer put his produce into a pile and smoothed out his pile, and the Levi did not remove truma gedola from it. Case number 8, umaiser sheni vehektish, or meiser sheni, or hektish, which is the 10% that the owner was supposed to take to Yerushalayim, or produce that he donated to the Beis HaMikdash, shaloi niftu, that were not redeemed onto money at all, and the owner then went ahead and ate that produce. Case number 9, v'hashamish she'achal pachis mikazayis, or a waiter who ate less than 1 ounce worth of bread while he was serving the meal. Final case number 10, Vehanachri, or if a person ate with a non-Jew, in these final 5 cases, Ein mizamnin aleyan, we are not allowed to make a mizuman counting them.